All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to another Quest-i-on. That was the artist Green Day with the songs Holiday and then Boulevard of Broken Dreams, both off their album American Idiot. So yeah, great songs. Brings up a lot of memories for me listening to those. And yeah, I thought we'd go do a deep dive and see what we see. So let's take a look at the lyrics and even just the name Green Day. So green is the color of the heart chakra, which is right in the middle of the seven. So the middle path, the middle way, green is Christ, sort of the merging of these two realms. And so a green day, and even day being of the S-U-N-S-O-N, the day, children of the sun, children of Christ. So Green Day, Christ Day, or Christ. You know, this is a very Christic name in and of itself. And then, yeah, so the first song, Holiday. So this song is, what I see in it is a examination of the fallen state and a sort of declaration that I'm not going to fall with it, sort of stepping away, or that awakening point. So holiday, even holiday is a holy day. So there's a lot of talk about, which I'll mention, but stepping back into the holiday or the holy day or the Christic day. So say, hey, hear the sound of the falling rain coming down like an Armageddon flame. So the baptism of water and the baptism of fire, both an internal process, but also expressing itself externally with this Armageddon, which it doesn't mean that this whole experience is ending, but the old world certainly is. And that's what's necessary with this baptism of fire, this cleansing, purifying truth sweeping the lands. That's what the Christ does. The shame, the ones who died without a name, or the ones, so essentially the ones who died without stepping into remembrance, remembering that their name is Christ. So the ones who didn't go through this process and died otherwise, of course, there's no end to anyone, but that's just what he's drawing upon here. Hear the dogs howling out of key. So dogs inverse is gods, hear us inverted gods, not realizing who we are, howling out of key. We are playing a discordant tune. We're out of harmony with creation, with this experience around us. To a hymn called Faith and Misery. So that drawing upon religious hypocrisy, faith and misery, this dance that you play when you play the religious game of you're a worthless, piece of shit basically, and but you better grovel to the right God or say the right things and pay the right church, or you're going to go to hell. But it's misery because you're lowering yourself to such a miserable state. That's the slave game. And bleed, the company lost the war today. So just this fallen state is sort of being described. And then he says, I beg to dream and differ from the hollow lies. So to awaken, this is the dawning of the rest of our lives on holiday. So that Christic awakening, the Christ return, what we are individually going through and collectively going through of the Christic return, of not being an externalized savior in a man or woman or anybody. Nobody's going to save us, but Christ is the salvation. It is the saving essence. And it's you. You're not separate from it, and you never were. We just forgot. And that's all. We're just remembering. Hear the drum pounding out of time. So again, this discordant, out of harmony. Another protester has crossed the line. So the sort of, cross the line is in coming from the, to find the monies on the other side. So you could look at this maybe like another protester has crossed the line, as in someone protesting the reality around has crossed the line by going from left to right hemisphere, from head to heart, connecting the two realms. So perhaps it's referring to that, to find the monies on the other side, because that's where the divinity is. Or it could just be saying, on a more literal sense, a protester protesting from one angle. You know, you're playing the left-right um, um, game, political game that's been played for forever, and you find the money's on the other side, as in the corruption is also on the other side, because it's all part of the same. So you could look at it both ways. Can I get another amen? There's a flag wrapped around a score of men, a gag, a plastic bag on a monument. So just pointing out the ridiculousness of society and just the fallen state. And then he repeats again, I beg to dream and differ from the hollow lies. This is the dawning of the rest of our lives on holiday, the Christic awakening. And then 3-4, the representative from California has the floor. So California is often it can be described in both ways, but sometimes it's described as a heavenly space, a resemblance of that heaven on earth, and sometimes it refers to the hellish creation that has erupted from that. So, it could be referring to either, really, in this context. Sieg Heil to the President Gasman, bombs away is your punishment. So again, just looking at hypocrisy within government, pulverize the Eiffel Towers or criticize your government. Bang, bang goes the broken glass and kill all the fags that don't agree. Trials by fire, setting fire, it's not the way that's meant for me. So again, the recognition of the fallen state and to step away from it. It's not a way that's meant for me. Just cause, hey, 4 times, so fourfold nature of man, or 4 times again, 8, infinite 8, because we're outlaws. And it's not really outlaw necessarily, because we're aligning with the law, which is the inherent knowing of what's right and what is wrong within each of us. And that's the Christ guidance. But we're outlaws compared to the legalese bullshit system that we found ourselves in, because we're outlaws. Being code for Christ. So then it repeats again, just stepping into that Christic awakening. So to live the rest of our lives on holiday, the holy days. And as we all do, this heavenly reality becomes so much more tangible in the physical sense. So that's Holiday, the first song. And then the next one, Boulevard of Broken Dreams. So this song is about it's recognizing that this path must be walked alone. No one else can do it for us. And it is a solitary path to step into this Christic awakening. And so it's just sort of singing about that. I walk a lonely road, the only one that I have ever known. Don't know where it goes, but it's home to me, and I walk alone. So just examining this path and this straight and narrow way that we walk, and how it is refining and lonely, and it's meant to be that way. It's meant to prove our strength and our courage and our resolve, not to do it for some popularity contest or to appeal to anyone else. It must be solitary. I walk this empty street on the boulevard of broken dreams. So boulevard of broken dreams. There's probably something deeper in that. Boulevard and broken. So BB 22. B kind of looks like an 8. So 88. Maybe the infinite cycle going on within. Yeah, there's probably more to that. But it's a boulevard. So the street within. And broken dreams, because it's where dreams can be manifest, but that only happens if we've completed to a certain degree to be able to bring the dreams into reality. And that's what the Christ is here to do, is to guide us to be in that position so that all our dreams can flow through us and be manifested in this reality. But it's very challenging to maintain, hence the work. Where the city sleeps, and I'm the only one, and I walk alone. So the city is sleeping, the sleepy masses, and I'm the only one, and I walk alone. I walk alone 3 times, and then I walk before it continues. So Trinity in the 3 or 4 with the fourfold nature, but it's sort of like stepping off from the last line. So maybe it's hinting at breaking out of a cycle, maybe. My shadow's the only one that walks beside me. So that is our truly our only companion is our shadow. And you might be tempted to fall into the idea of, we have to remove our shadow or punish our shadow or fight our shadow or kill our shadow. But your shadow is a part of you. It's a divine part of you. And the shadow is really just the unconscious waiting to become conscious. So if we push the shadow away, then it just grows more deeply unconscious. But if we walk beside the shadow or allow the shadow to walk and like integrate with it, then it doesn't have room to get us into tricky situations. And we're integrating the wholeness of self, not just being selective and, playing, spiritual bypassing games where we're negating, I don't have an ego. I've already dealt with that. Those kind of comments. When somebody says that, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of scary, because that means that the shadow is so deceptive and has taken hold of that situation for someone to believe that. So we all have shadow. We all have ego. It's there for a purpose. But if we're aware of it and we keep the light shining on it, then it doesn't have room to take over, which is the whole point. So my shadow is the only one that walks beside me. My shallow heart's the only thing that's beating. Sometimes I wish someone out there will find me. Till then, I walk alone. So just examining this path, and then the portion, just sort of singing, doing like chanting in that kind of way. I'm walking down the line that divides me somewhere in my mind. So the right and left hemisphere, this crossing point on the borderline of the edge, and where I walk alone, because no one else is there. That's the deepest, most innermost part of you, and nobody else is there. And it's really only you anyway. There is no other besides experience, besides perception. Read between the lines. So read between the lines of this song of what else is being described. But then he says, read between the lines of what's fucked up and everything's all right. To see divinity in all parts, the parts that are fucked up and the parts that are all right. God is there. God is there. You are there within all of that. So walk that middle path in between. Because then what's fucked up doesn't have to like bleed into over everything else. It's like, again, this relationship with shadow. If we polarize ourselves to the extreme where we are so resistant to the shadow and we're so divided from what we perceive as being fucked up, instead of just seeing it as an opportunity to integrate with, then divided we will remain. So check my vital signs to know I'm still alive, and I walk alone. And then it repeats. Repeats again. Yep, repeats. Yeah, so that's that song, Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Green Day. So I hope you all enjoyed that. Thanks for listening. And again, welcome to another Quest-i-on, the quest to illuminate the single eye, the quest I am on. And this is a space where we gather to ask questions and speak on anything that's on our minds, anything that's come up over the week. And I love the way the conversations always flow. I mean, it's just been such a wonderful part of my week every week whenever we do this. And, you know, I hear from others that they appreciate it as well. So it's a great opportunity to come together. And if it, yeah, so if at any point you feel like jumping in, asking a question, there's no hierarchy. There's no limits to what we can talk about or go over, or who can speak, or any of these kind of things. So if you find yourself inspired and want to ask a question or share an experience or go over anything that's going on for you, chances are it's going on for somebody else. So it's always a gift to have those offerings put forward, and they give us a great topic to discuss. So that's always an option. If you are new to this or just want a reminder, just hit that center button on your screen if you'd like to speak, and that signals to me to open up your mic, and then you can jump in. I'll call on you if it's your first time opening up your mic, and if your mic's already open, just wait for a quiet moment to jump in. And if you if you have a hard time with that, just toggle your mic on and off, and I'll do my best to see it and call on you in that way. What else? I do have offline questions that I can always refer back to if there is a quiet moment and we have some time. But I do love to give priority to those who are here live on the call who've made the time to join us. So, so if you have anything, make sure to jump in. And just to go over some brief announcements. So let's see, on Sunday, I believe we're still on schedule to have the show with Darth on consciousness. So Darth Vader's has been working diligently to put together a presentation to go over on what is consciousness, what is a soul, what are all these things these terms that kind of get thrown around, what's the, at least what we can discover, what's the history behind these terms and how they've been used, and how can we use this to gain a better understanding around this conscious experience that we're having, so that we can move forward with that better understanding. So I'm very excited for that conversation. As far as we're going to have that on Sunday, it will probably be around the same time. But I need to confirm with Darth and whatever's going on here, the best time to do that. So I'll probably get a post about that likely today or tomorrow or maybe Saturday about that show. But just wanted to give you all a heads up that we will be doing that very soon, and he is quite excited to share what he's discovered, and the bits of conversations that we've had have already been lots of fun. So look forward to that on Sunday. And yeah, just a reminder that I am 100% donation supported to do all that I do. So if you find yourself wanting to help contribute in any which way, here are some options financially that do go a very long way. I appreciate everyone who does chip in to help out, just to cover, just to give me more flexibility and time to be able to dedicate to doing these shows, to answering questions, to working with people. So very, very, very appreciated. Thank you for that. And if you're unable to commit financially, I totally get it. There are other ways that you can help out. And if you just want to devote some time to doing various things, administrative stuff or creating content or anything in that capacity, just reach out, and I'm sure we can find something for you to do if you'd like to help. And just a continued reminder that I am still supporting Bali and the orphans at Lions of Uganda in Uganda. Here's a Gifts and Go that you can go to support that directly. That's giftsandgo.com/Lions of Uganda. Or you can just donate to me, and just make sure to, on any of these links that are listed here, justincarpenter.org/contribute. And just make sure to leave a note that you'd like it to go to Bali, and I'll make sure I get it over to him. So they are very, very appreciative of any help at any point. So thank you all to all who have pitched in to help out in that area, and looking forward to the days where everyone's needs are just met. We don't have to be worrying about raising money for basic needs. But until then, we'll keep doing our best with that. And I'm happy to help. So yeah, thanks for your care there. And yeah, also wanted to mention, so based on my post yesterday, where I posted a campaign video that I helped create. So just to give a little bit more backstory on that, I kind of wrote it out in the post, but this guy's name is Peacemaker Aldo, and he legally changed his name to Peacemaker. And he did that because he's so aligned with this mission of bringing peace everywhere. And so he's running for sheriff in Virginia Beach, and has already been met with extreme opposition from the local establishment. They do not like him. They don't like what he represents. They don't like the flashlight that he brings with him to expose corruption. And he's already been through the ringer with dealing with these people. So last year he called a special election for the sheriff position because the sheriff was out of office for X amount of time, and the job position clearly defines that if the position holder is out of office for a certain amount of time, and he was, then a special election could be called. And so he called the special election, and having no experience, no real campaign knowledge or any of that kind of stuff, he just wanted to step in and help out. And I guess I'll also mention he's running on this platform of restoring grand jury oversight, which essentially is bringing power back to the jury as the ultimate authority in court proceedings versus the judge. So the judge is still there to kind of hold like a orderly position of maintaining organization within a proceeding, someone who has experience in how those things go. But a jury is always supposed to be a jury of your peers, and the people are always supposed to have the highest authority. That's how this government was initially set up. The people are always on top. So when there's a justice proceeding, the jury is the final say. But in the 40s, when the Bar Association started to become dominant in our legal proceedings, this precedent was quietly erased. And juries were kind of put only as like, oh yeah, we're going to have the appearance that the jury has say, but in some cases they don't even refer to the jury, and they don't always go with what the jury says either. The judge has the final say, which is just crazy. And so what he's doing is he's found a methodology of appealing to the President Trump, to restore, using 3 laws, very clearly defining this, to reestablish grand jury oversight within any county, but he's pioneering that in Virginia Beach. So with that, you lose all officials lose their good old boy club of protecting each other. Even the most corrupt ones, they get protected by each other, and there's no real recourse for the people to hold corrupt officials accountable because of just the kangaroo court spin around that happens. So with this being implemented, if the current system still stays in play for however long it does, people are going to have recourse to be able to hold corrupt officials accountable. And so the entire corrupt establishment in that area has been gunning for him left and right for what he stands for and what he's bringing to the table. And as I mentioned, when he called that special election last year, he was set up outside the courthouse, and they kept asking him to move further away. I mean, he was on public property, and they kept asking him to move away. He did a few times. But then when he moved past the point where he knew Jehovah's Witness and other people who have set up and were setting up, he was like, no, I'm not moving any further. You have no reason to push me any further. I've already obliged you several times without really me needing to. And as soon as he refused, they arrested him and held him in jail for, about a week or so. before the election, he got out and still was able to get 30% of the vote from some nobody, no financing, just as he was personally financing his campaign and all that. He still was able to get 30% of the vote last year. So this year he's got a great chance because he's already got momentum. He's already got people who now know his name and know what's going on. And after the special election last year, when he was fighting these bullshit charges in court, representing himself and going through the proper ways of addressing the nonsense that the standard court system is set up. You know, you speak the right language and they're supposed to acknowledge it. But again, with all this nonsense that they've implemented, they don't even have to, if they hold enough power within a corrupt police establishment, a corrupt jail, all this. So they arrested him in court and held him in jail with $1 million bail. And they refused to let him have access to any funds to be able to do anything about that. And they put him in solitary confinement for 67 days. It might have even been over 70 days. Over 2 months of being in solitary confinement. Just extremely cruel. And yet during this time, he was meditating, praying, and fasting. You know, as much as he could. Growing stronger by the minute. And since he's gotten out, his resolve has only grown. You know, they held him as long as they could, thinking that they could break him, thinking that they could intimidate him. But his resolve, his strength has only grown. They have no idea what they've done. And speaking to him, he is just such a peaceful, loving, God-driven man who knows his stuff. He knows what he's doing works, and he knows he's got them terrified. So I met him at the Foxhole Gala, and he was one of the speakers there. If any of you listened to that, he was the last one physically present who spoke. Peacemaker Aldo. He had a great speech. It was very similar to mine, and we spoke after that. And I felt a connection. He did as well. I said to reach out to him, and so I did, and we got connected. And so I've been helping him out with quite a few things remotely, like building him a new website and setting up that campaign video. And then in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be heading down to Virginia Beach, and I'm really grateful. Lila's actually going to come with me. And we're both, because he's just looking for people that he can trust. You know, he's got a whole corrupt establishment. He's had people trying to infiltrate his groups and lie about him and gather information. They're scared of him. So he's just looking for people that he can trust to help him at the polling booths, just to like talk with people and get the word out. So I'm going down in a couple weeks to Virginia Beach to help him out. And I will be until the election on November 4th, at least. And so very much looking forward to that. And it's just been really great connecting with him because he's just another very competent, very righteous dude, you know. And so I love speaking with him. And I'm hoping that at some point we'll do a podcast together and he can talk more about his story and all of that. But I'm somewhat hesitant to do that before the election, just because some of the things that I've talked about are a bit controversial, as y'all know. Not that he would have issue with that, but just if people who are going after him caught wind of that, it might be something. So I'm going to talk more with him about that, but I do hope at some point that we get to have a conversation with him and y'all get to meet him more, because he's just a great guy. Peacemaker Aldo. So yeah, that's just a announcement update on that. So if you're in or near Virginia Beach or know anybody in that space, especially if you know anybody that would be willing to help leading up to the election on November 4th, especially on election day, because just to give you all, so there's only one polling station open right now that he's been at every day for early voting, and then starting the 24th, 5th, they open up 5 more, so there'll be 6 totals that we've got to cover. And then on election day, there's over 100 stations that we'd love to have a lot of coverage on. So if you know anybody in the area, especially on November 4th, that'd be willing to come help and hand out flyers and talk with people near Virginia Beach, please let me know. I'll be making that request as we come up to that, to try and recruit more people to help out. But yeah, it's a great guy, and I am excited to be involved with them. So yeah, anyway, thanks for listening to that. And yeah, I think that's about it as far as announcements today. So we'll just jump right into the show. So I'll just pass it off and see if anybody has anything that they want to start us off with, any topics, questions, things they want to jump into first. All right, well, we'll do a offline submitted question first. So this one, this one was from Freebird, and she asked, could you please explain how we are becoming more crystalline beings? What does that mean? Are there symptoms associated with that? Is it both physical and spiritual? Yeah, great question. So I was told, and I very much believe this, that back in Atlantean times, we were, like, instead of now, our physical structure is carbon-based. But in that time, our structure was actually silicon-based, which is where the term like crystalline comes from. And there's a reason why silica is used in making motherboards and electronics where there needs to be fast communication, light transmission, because it's very, very effective for that information to pass through. So it makes sense that we were once more based in this way, so that the light, which is always within us, could travel through us in a more effective way. And as we sort of fell from grace, fell from this more light-aligned way, and we started to fall into the darkness, this was reflected in our makeup, our structure. And so we became more and more dense, whereas the crystalline structure is very light, likely in weight, but certainly in light transmission. We became more dense as we fell, and our structure changed. So, seeing as we are hopefully at the bottom of this round of falling, and we're turning around and moving back up, then this dense form that we found ourselves in is only going to be shifting into a lighter and lighter way. So that's what is often referred to as like the crystal body, shifting into this new reality. Now, it's often used as a very much a buzz term with not much awareness of what's actually being discussed. But that would be, from my knowledge, what that's being referred to is a shifting back into that. So how is this happening, or why is this happening? It's just it's a natural mechanism as we begin to decide to live and walk with the Christ, as the Christ. Then the Christ is going to create more pathways within us for that light to flow through. And this starts with just, speaking the truth, as being honest and authentic and true. But as we continually do that, then our structure changes. It shifts. So, are there symptoms associated with that? She asked. Sure. I mean, the symptoms would be infinite, right? So, I mean, we talk about how somebody going through a detox is going to experience just about any symptom under the sun, any sort of way that can show up, because that is part of this process. As our body is becoming lighter, as we're consuming less and less dead and dense things, then there's more life and light that flows through it. And so the symptoms of the discomfort of the density leaving us can be quite uncomfortable, especially if you're going at it in a hard and fast kind of way. So detox symptoms are very much a part of this, sort of emotional and mental symptoms as well, of going through various traumatic patterning releases, so that's a part of this density that we've carried. It's all connected. So it's not just physical, it's our emotional body, our spiritual body, our mental body, like it's all part of the same. And so when we go through traumatic patterning, it leaves like scar tissue, these little dense pockets of scarring within our being, and those have to be released in order to lift past a certain way. They're like anchor points tying us down. So we have part of us that might be looking to grow and to fly and to shift upwards. But if we have the scar tissue as like anchor points, they're, if you can imagine, like little lines tied to each of these, holding us down. By themselves, they might not be impossible, but all together, it's truly impossible to move through with those lines still attached to us. So as we start to lift, and that's why it's different for everybody. Some people are more drawn to the physical transformation at first, and maybe they go through a change in diet or a change in what they're consuming. And some people aren't able to even approach the food journey until they've addressed the emotional aspects, or what are the barriers, or where's the fear being held on to that's keeping either this weight onto me, or this thing locked up inside of me. So it looks different for everybody, and that's why I feel it's important to know the full scope of what's encompassed within this elevation journey, so that whenever any of these things come up, we can address that, instead of saying, oh, I need to follow this order of operation, do this in this way. No, the order is going to be different for you as it's different for me. So what might come up when these traumatic patternings start to be released is it's reflected for us, when we give signals to the universe, to the divine, that we're ready to start moving through these, then okay, well, the divine's going to give us an opportunity to work through that traumatic pattern. So naturally, it's going to create circumstances in our life that reflect this trauma, this thing that's been locked up inside of us, to give us opportunity to truly release it. We can do the rituals and the chanting and the things, the cord cutting, all of that can be helpful. But if we're not really creation's going to test us. Have we actually released something, or are we just saying some words that we found, or listening to some, spiritual sounding guru or guide telling us you have to say these things, or, hold these crystals or whatever, which I'm not negating those of being helpful. But if our attention is drawn away from okay, what is actually being presented to me in my life? What's right in my face to deal with? And if our approach to that is just to say, oh, no, I don't need to deal with that because I've got the crystals, or I've said the chants, or all these different things, then I'm missing the point. No, creation has brought this to me, not to run away from, but to face. And so that's how that scar tissue is kind of worked through and released, is if when that same traumatic pattern comes up again, what might have triggered me before no longer triggers me. And I'm able to face my shadow instead of pretending like I don't have one or running away from it. But to face that and to move through it, to transmute it, to alchemize it. So that might be something that shows up, and you know, you could say symptoms associated with it of going through those big emotional releases, or having a challenging experience happen in my life to face and to overcome, or to nod and then to repeat, and so those would be symptoms as well. But there's really no limit to it. I mean, this is just like, that's why I don't like using buzz terms without more room for talking about them or context to be applied, because it's really no different than just everything else that we talk about. You know, this is the work, this is the way, this is the challenges that we face and overcome, and they're going to manifest within our lives any which way that we need them to, because everything within creation is rooting for you to step through these challenges and become a brighter, more beautiful, more powerful version of you. Everything in creation is aligned to that. Everything is working towards that. But sometimes that shows up in challenges. And oftentimes it does, because we're in such a challenged and lowered state that we've got a lot of things to let go of. And so creation is lovingly giving us these challenges, because it's like saying, hey, like you're holding yourself back by not addressing these things. Every time you turn away, every time you feel like this is not important, or I don't want to deal with this today, I'll deal with it tomorrow. Every time that happens, it's, you know, of course, creation isn't going to give up on you because it's you. You know, you're not going to give up on you. But that's what's happening. So that's what we're shifting into. It's just a elevated sense of self, and so our bodies will change within that. Not overnight, but there's already, within this fallen state, there's already a barely perceivable faint glow of light that exists in everybody. Some it's brighter than others, but it's there. It's you know, if we want to say scientifically, or it's measurably noticeable that it exists while people are living, and it turns off when people aren't. So this light is only going to grow as we become a better way, as we become a brighter lighthouse. That's what we are. We're to be that lighthouse. And so as our commitment to being that lighthouse strengthens, then of course the form within us is going to strengthen to become better in that space and way. So yeah, and she asks, is it both physical and spiritual? Yes, absolutely. All realms, all layers. So yeah, I'll just leave that one there, and yeah, I'll pass it off. And I see Reno has your hand up. Go ahead.
Hey, Justin. Great topic. I really enjoyed listening to that. And I wanted to, yeah, if you could just carry forward with that, maybe my request would be about maybe a bifurcation in that, like a silicon immortality versus a Christ-centered immortality. So like a silicon immortality would be like a Babel 2.0, like humans trying to achieve like godhood apart from God, and like a Christ-centered immortality being like a New Jerusalem, you know, God giving immortality as a gift, and how they might exist simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So just I believe what you're asking is more like a technological ascension. You know, the cybernetic, the brain chips and all of that kind of stuff to create a sort of pseudo immortality in that way, really just delaying death in more technological ways, versus the true life path, which is the Christic path, So I was saying within the silicon-based life forms that we turn back to, that is actually the true natural way to merge those two ideas. Whereas the externalized version of technology and using silicon-based technologies as that platform to do it, that's it can work in the short term, but it only works in the short term. And that's sort of always the nature of these two paths. One of them is the slow and steady, the turtle that wins the race, the long-term approach, versus the fast and quick fix and short-term approach. One of them leads to life, perpetual life. One of them always leads to death. But you can have the illusion of delaying that death for a very long time, perhaps. And that's sort of the technological route. So I'm not in any way saying that technology is a bad thing. Technology is a wonderful thing, but it's important that we remember that technology is just a copy of us. It's just a recreation of the greatest piece of technology on earth, which is us. So there's nothing wrong with using technology. There's nothing wrong with having it and interacting with it. Where it can be problematic, in my opinion, is the atrophy that can happen when we overuse technology to take us away from the internal work. So I see technology as this, the light side of it, the beautiful side of it, the way that I encourage it. It's a platform for us to step into a faster trajectory of remembrance, and an opportunity for us to use that technology to raise to a certain level, say, like telepathy, where many of us are not, we're very elementary as far as like our telepathic abilities. Some of us are stepping into it more, but it's not there completely, and it's certainly not flawless. So you have the internet being this way of telecommunication, this way to communicate in that way, while we are learning to reboot our systems of telepathy. So if that became a crutch that we only relied upon, or believed that we didn't even have these abilities within, then technology becomes a problem. It becomes a what was once a stepping stone of elevation now becomes a weight holding us down and keeping us locked into it. So all tools can be viewed in this way. Tools can be wonderful in certain cases, but they can also become, when dependency is added into it, then it can become a weight that holds us back. So throughout this experience, I know there's going to be a technocratic push to go completely gung-ho in technology and have cyborg built-in technologies, things structured into our physical being, and I'm not saying that all those are bad all the time necessarily. Where I will always refuse is if it's bypassing my natural abilities of learning that myself, which you could argue can happen even if it's external to my body. I don't really plan on implementing anything within my body. Now, there are instances where people are in extreme pain or having a hard time or have some disability where that can help them regain that ability, which might be helpful in the short term. And at the same time, I still absolutely believe that there's nothing that we can't heal ourselves. We can regrow limbs, we can regrow organs and all of that. So is that, like, the question will always be there. Is that the path to go or not? And of course, it's an individual decision on what is crossing that line or where do we go. But I'm just presenting the larger scope of it, of having that pure Christic evolutionary way, which is very much aligned with a natural, slow and steady, not relying on technology kind of way. And then there's the other extreme, which is pure technology and zero internal work. So even with these two ends of the spectrum, what do I feel is right? And it's always back in the middle. So to recognize the back and forth represented between these two extremes, to have that middle path, to always be bringing the Christ through, even our usage of technology, to have them as tools to elevate ourselves, but also to remember that, like, I don't ultimately need that. And I think this will become more and more evident when we do start to see generations untarnished by the mechanisms of the Antichrist that were keeping us in this sort of dulled down state. When they step into that, these start discovering these powers within them, and we start to see children flying and walking on water and commanding the elements, and having these awesome powers, the real superhero powers that were all available to us. We just forgot. And so to have that, I think, will really encourage people who might be distracted by the pure technocracy, technological route, to come back into trying those things, to moving into that more natural way. And of course, everyone is going to present both lessons of learning the right way to do something, or the fluid, harmonious way to do something. And then, of course, there will be many people that will choose to, on some higher level, sacrifice themselves to present a contrasting lesson as well of what maybe not to do. I seeing people so invested into like an AI, virtual reality world where, somebody can actually create a literal matrix that you plug into, and you can live the rest of your days out in that way. And I'm sure many people will do that. But, and it's not, I don't believe it's anybody's right to say that somebody shouldn't do that. Everyone should have the freedom to express and do that. And so what we'll naturally see is that spectrum expressed all throughout the earth. And we'll have various regions and cities and places where you'll have one end of the spectrum of the technocratic reality, where it'll be super virtual reality stuff everywhere, and it'll be very much a creation of, or have the potential of turning into a Babylon very quickly, and many of them will, very hedonistic and pleasure seeking and all of that. And as long as no one's being taken advantage of, then who is anyone to say that they shouldn't have that? I don't think anyone has the right to tell people not to do that. The consequences will speak for themselves. I will always advocate for people, if anyone or anything is being taken advantage of, that should never be stood for. But if that's not happening, and if people are willingly choosing to enter into debauchery and those kind of experiences, then who is anyone to say that they can't do that? I will fully support their ability and their wants to do that, but they will also be the consequential reminders of what a life like that will live. And they try as they might through technology to extend their lives, it's still the death path. So they're playing games to delay death. Whereas the other path is you're encouraging your life-giving systems within your body to boot up and to work. And so the other end of the spectrum, we'll see communities that are, very much no technology allowed, nothing powered on, deep in the wilderness or wherever they want to set up. We'll have those kind of communities set up as well. And again, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the right way to go, to exclude oneself and to negate all of technology, but we will have people representing that end of the spectrum. And with it will come, wonderful things, but also its own set of problems. And so how to stay connected to both ends of the spectrum is to be right there in the middle, and to kind of like dance that curving sine wave motion back and forth between them, maybe not to such extremes, but to have that familiarity with both realms, so that where where there is opportunity for technology to make some powerful changes to shift things for the better, let's do that. And where technology has become a crutch or weight that's holding us back, let's recognize that as well and maybe let it go. But that's also a very personal journey and not something that should ever be mandated or dictated. So it's very exciting to imagine, because we'll have just the full dynamic expression, untethered, uncorrupted, uncontrolled, because the Antichrist is all about controlling people to fit into a specific box, to control and to enslave. So when you have the Christ rule, which is about freedom, we will have the freedom to be everywhere. And so to travel in this new earth is going to be one of the coolest things ever. I mean, just to experience such differences from going from one region to another, and those that are full of the ways that lead to death, they'll show themselves, and the natural mechanisms within creation will sort of prevent those ideas from living for very long. That's just the natural way of it. So people who choose to still consume dead animals or eat crap or whatever, or still be locked into hedonistic debauchery, pleasure, and those kind of things, they won't live that long. And it doesn't mean that energy will necessarily go away entirely, but it does also mean that it won't have the strength to just propel itself by itself, especially when there's no artificial means of propping it up. So the ones that will remain and the ones that will grow stronger are the ones that are truly aligned with the Christ, that life-giving essence, and the ways that propel us to becoming better and more connected, and life just flows to that naturally. So it will continue in that trajectory in that way. So yeah, it's very exciting to consider, and will be very fun to watch play out. So great question, and I'll just pass it back to you.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think I watched that show, The 100, and it had silicone chips inside of people's brains. It's not the only show that does something like that, but these were like very old consciousnesses that were, if you call it the deep state, or how does that really operate? It could be something like that, where there are just, so as we rise as a kind of humanity of Christed beings, whatever that looks like, we start to hit a glass ceiling, of where we realize that, like, kind of like what we are now, where we see that there's a limit, whether it's Israel or however it manifests, kind of embedded into our control systems, and it is this silicon life form. So at the same time as us having a push factor towards Christ, we're also having this revulsion and repulsion of realizing, that we've been controlled all of this time, but in a very, almost like a very, like just one sort of central Android system, whether it's coming from, I don't know, some giant ancient computer servers in the moon or whatever. But there's been this one Android, here that's been, underholding this empire consciousness, and then that realization allows everyone to have this, higher awareness or purpose and push factor towards Christ consciousness, where it'd be far less of a choice; it'll be an imperative.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, and it is one of those things that no matter which way we go, the natural mechanisms of creation will point us back to the way. So if we want to learn through contrasting elements of learning what not to do, and sort of falling and bumping and scraping and all that, which we will and we have, and so we have that always as our choice. Or when we feel that sensation of harmony and that flow, and we step into that, and it's a much less cumbersome road that way, but all those roads lead back to the one. There's no getting around where we're being pointed to, because it's simply you being guided by you to reach your highest potential. And even the characters or elements within this story of you becoming the youest you, it's still you too. So even the villains and the anti-heroes and those who seem to be hell-bent on destroying or pushing us away from that, they're merely characters in the story that you wrote and you wanted to play out. And here we are. So it's quite comical in some ways, but it's also very beautiful too. It's like this wonderful story that's always playing out, and we love a good story. We really do. So why not have other elements like the technocratic which has both pitfalls and elevating ways within it to tangle with and to remove ourselves from and come back with and integrate with, and which is like our relationship with our shadow anyway. You know, technology is just it's another shadow. It can be another shadow of us. And so it's not to negate or to shy away from, which is, you know, one of the, I see this topic comes up with the Ringing Cedar series, the Anastasia series, and her perspective is to stay away from technocracy completely, you know, to stay away from technology in that, which it would be a space where I disagree slightly. I mean, I see the necessity perhaps to advocate for that within this time where technocratic dependency is so large, to bring us back to having connection with nature. I think the connection with nature should be foundational and established primarily. But I also don't believe that it's right to negate technology, because it's like, where do you draw the line? You know, like anything that we use or work with or used to build with, like it's all forms of technology. And so they're all tools that can be very helpful for us to move through until we're in ultimate God mode, where like I can manifest a whole structure to be formed just with my mind, which I'm not saying we don't get there. We do eventually, but in the meantime, I still want to build this house. And so I'm going to use this hammer. I'm going to use this saw. And yeah, if I have power tools and I have other things to help me out in that way, if I have an AI to help me design it and structure things in certain ways, then absolutely I'm going to use those things. But not as a primary. It's a secondary tool, just like the left brain is not the primary. It's a secondary tool that comes out when we need it. And then we put it back when we're done with it, not to consume us and mandate us to be in charge always. But we'll learn through all the ways, you know, contrasting, falling. It's all there for us to step into that highest potential and for us to experience what it's like in the fallen state and learning through that. It's all very purposeful for that same story. So great question. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, so I'll just pass it back, and oh, I see Izzy. Go ahead, Izzy. Hey, Izzy, you just got to hit that same button again to open up your mic.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great, because I'm using the mic. Thank God, thank you. I just happened to be looking at my Telegram channel, so I went, oh my gosh, he's having a live. I got some questions for him. Before the young man answered, and I'm assuming he was young, before he asked the question, you were talking about the question that was presented before from another lady regarding past events. This morning, well, first of all, I know that there's a lot of stuff happening with the geomagnetic force and just everything that's happening out there in the universe, and of course, it's going to affect us. This morning, well, for the last couple of nights, I've been having. I might go to bed at 8:30 at night, and the next thing you know, it's 1 o'clock, and then I'm wide awake, and then I might fall asleep at 4, but then by 6, I'm up because I want to start doing things. So I've had a couple of days where my sleep is a little erratic, but when I do wake up, I feel like I've rested for hours and hours. However, this morning, I was going to go run some errands, and I was at the stoplight, and all of a sudden I had got this very overwhelming feeling, and I got it just like heat just went down up and down my arm, my body. Now I'm a retired nurse. Okay. So it's hard not to, you don't want to diagnose yourself, but it's very hard to turn off the nursing after 40 years and try to figure out, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But anyway, while I was sitting at the red light, it turned green, but the people in front of me, I guess, hesitated. And I had to sit there for another round, and I got really anxious. My heart rate started speeding like crazy. And I thought, oh, dear God, And what it reminded me was of an incident that took place in 2008. On the way to work one morning, I had to be at work at 4:30 in the morning. And I would attribute it that it was possibly back then a severe panic attack. I was working full time, being a manager where I was at. I had cases that started 5 and 6. And then I had my mom who had dementia and my uncle next door who was blind. So I was kind of burning the candle from both ends. I passed out. The next thing I know, my car is sitting on top of a grass mount. I've totaled my car, and I came out of it with just a broken, arm. And I shouldn't say just, but I had to have surgery. They checked my heart. They did the heart cath. Everything was fine. But all of that to tell you that today when I was sitting and I started feeling the way I was feeling, it immediately sent me flashbacks to that time of that incident on November the 8th, December 2008. And so what I wanted to ask you, because I think you said something and maybe I misunderstood, was that, is it possible? Now, I'm attributing to the fact that maybe I did not have, my sugar might have been low because all I had was a handful of pumpkin seeds and a handful of sunflower seeds and just like a quarter of remaining protein drink. Okay. And lately, I just don't have an appetite. I just don't feel like eating, and I feel great. I have pretty much started eating nothing but fruits and veggies. This is probably the first week that I've actually gave up my fish. That was the only thing I was eating was wild caught salmon. And I've been slowly but surely trying to ease off. And I had some cans of sardines, so I want to get rid of that before I do that. But I wanted to ask you, when I felt what I did, as I was waiting for the light to turn green, and then it did, I was a little scared. I always say cancel, negate, because I don't want to put it out there. And I was in my parking lot, and I got off, went into Walmart, got what I needed. I sat there, and it was this fear, just this overwhelming fear. And so instead of taking the freeway home, I called my friend and I said, hey, Diana, can you do me a favor? She goes, yeah. I said, can you keep me company on the phone? And she goes, well, what's going on? And when I told her, but that is everything that I felt was identical to the way I felt back in 2008, but not to the degree. Is it possible that I have not released that, or was it surfacing up because it was something that I have to deal and get rid of? Yeah. So that's basically what I want to know. I mean, I'm attributing it. And so when I came home, I did my blood pressure. My blood pressure was a little high, but I know, of course it's going to be, but eventually everything went back to normal. My heart rate was normal and everything else. And then I just decided, you know what? I don't want to eat. I'm going to drink some water and I'm going to lay down. So the question, I have twofold. The question, number one, this question is it possible what I experienced today, even it might have been, from a medical perspective, low blood sugar, but the symptom, the way I felt and the fear that came over me was identical to the way it was when I had my auto accident in 2008. And then the second question is, when I'm talking to Father God and oh, sorry, hold on, excuse me. Hold on, I'm sorry. I forgot to turn off my phone. So the second question is, in the mornings I meditate and I talk to Father God, and is Mother Earth someone that we should be addressing when we're doing our greetings and thank you? Because this is what I do. I'll say like, thank you, Father God, for a beautiful day. Thank you, Mother Earth, for the nature and the beauty and the animals, because I love birds and everything else. But is it okay to do that? And also, is her name Gaia, or was Gaia another name for something else in the past? So those are my two questions that I have. So, but the first one is the one that really is the first one I wanted to get your perspective on it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Great questions. So as far as like why you experienced that the first time, or why you experienced the same sort of feeling as you had with the auto accident, I like there's no way that I could answer that for you as far as like where is that coming from. But I do feel the intuitive hit that you got was, it could have been potentially protecting you from something else, something giving you a similar feeling, and maybe you moved in a way that got you out of harm's way, or you avoided something, so that could have been angelic protection shifting you. And it can also be, and can be simultaneously, this thing too, giving you an indicator of, where that traumatic patterning still exists. So how can I shift to where you're not discarding or tuning out of your intuitive hits to move into action or to shift, but how can I have that not affect me in this sort of emotionally, well, I shouldn't say emotion, like we can still experience emotions, but to not have it rock me off my center, to where I move to like the elevated heart rate or anything in that way. I heard a great example of like having life be like a horror movie that you're watching, and you see everyone else in the theater and they're jumping at the scare scenes, but you're at peace. You're watching it and you're just enjoying the movie. So to just use that example of like, okay, so everything that's happening around me that I'm witnessing, that's my movie. It's I'm the projector of this experience, and I'm experiencing the movie that I'm projecting out there. So if I know that, then why would I involuntarily let anything affect me? Now, I'm not saying to become like an emotionless, apathetic, I don't care about anything that happens kind of thing, but just to not involuntarily allow myself to have those reactions. I'm responding. The Christ responds. The Antichrist reacts. The shadow reacts. The unconscious ego reacts. But the Christ responds. So bringing my attention back to a response instead of a reaction. And so any indication, physical indications that you get from that may be uncomfortable or anything, it's just revealing to you, an area to see, okay, where I was reacting here. Even if it was an intuitive hit to cause you to shift or change your pattern or whatever, angelic protection is going to move through and shift us in whatever way we need it to. But it's giving you that opportunity to, revisit, like, okay, this destabilized me for a minute. So there's some work to do. And it might not be immediately evident, like what that work is or where it's coming from, but just to be aware of it, to walk through life consciously, so that whatever I'm being presented with is just feedback. It's a feedback loop from creation to reflect my internal state, so I can learn from it and shift. Did you have something to add?
No, I'm sorry. I was just trying to turn off my mic here, but no. And I guess I just wanted to make sure that, like I said, it's very hard for me to turn off my medical mind off. Okay. I have friends that say, oh no, I just ask God for faith. And I do have faith. Okay. But the nursing kicks in. I mean, you're talking about 40 years of nursing, working in the ER and ICU. So immediately I'm going to think, okay, heart, blah, 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 there's this. And then I'm Googling it, or, okay, is it low blood sugar? But I was just curious to find out that it was interesting that what I felt immediately took me back to 2008. So then I thought, okay, is this something that is unresolved? Is this a pattern that deep down is there and we need to work with it? And if so, what do I need to do to I guess, erase or block or, get rid of that feeling? Because like I said, 2008 to now, that's been a long time. And I had not felt like that or experienced that feeling since then.
Yeah, I would offer just a perspective shift around erasing or blocking or getting rid of, instead approaching it with like, okay, what's there to be integrated with? Like where is part of me that, could easily just be, and this is where so many of our fears are rooted, is a fear of death. So there was a moment that you had where your physical mortality was put into question, having a severe accident like that. And then here's another moment where you're getting a similar sensation, whether it's physically, relevant or not, it's still giving you that same sensation. So the fear of death might be a deep layer to uncover. It's like, what is my relationship with death? Not to block death as if this thing that I don't ever face, or we don't talk about, or I try and banish from my mind, or anytime these fears start to come up. But no, how can I embrace that? Like a wounded child, like how can I accept this wounded child as they are and hear what they have to say? Instead of, the approach of like blocking and pushing away kind of thing. Cause we can do that. We can, there are ways to certainly, push things down and block. And sometimes those were and numb out and all of that. Sometimes those are effective methods in the short term when we're in more of an immature state, but those only work in the short term. They don't work in the long term. And in fact, in the long term, they make things more challenging. So the more that we can embrace the long-term approach of not pushing things away and just facing, okay, what is the discomfort with this? What do I need to sit with it? And I'm not saying that you have to have all these answers right away, but just the willingness to approach them in that way is going to help you see and shift through whatever it is that you're being presented. And I certainly won't be able to define that, because that's only going to be your relationship with the divine and what's being brought to you. But yeah, happy to help with just giving a broad perspective on, how I feel about in that area. And yeah, so does that make sense? And then I can go into your next question.
Yes, that makes sense. You can go back. You can go to my second question.
All right, great. So the second question was about speaking to Mother Earth and Father God. And I'll just say that I'm not trying to diminish anything by saying this, but I'm just going to say it very plainly. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what we refer to the divine as. If we want to, like, we talked about this, I think last week or maybe the week before, about communicating with archangels and saints and praying to them. All of that's totally fine to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But just remember that it's just one. And it's not even really one, it's you. Like you are all those. You are Father God, you are Mother Earth. Now, this egoic construct is not necessarily, it's not the totality of those. So we do have to be careful with those thought patterns, because you can easily see how that would lead to an egotistical point of view of like, oh, I'm God and therefore I can do whatever. And it's not that you're more God than anything else, but you are also not less than. There is an equal aspect of divinity within all forms of creation. So if we want to conceptualize Father God and Mother Earth, that's great. I think there's a wonderful, because duality is expressed within this construct, I think having that frame of reference is very helpful. Father God being the immaterial, unmanifest, heavenly influence, and Mother Earth being the physical, animating elements that we see and feel and touch and experience in that way. So having these kind of this split reality can be very helpful, and I certainly do. I enjoy both of those concepts and communicating with them independently, but also with a recognition that they are one and the same. They're just manifesting themselves in different forms, and it can be helpful to frame our mindset around, where am I directing this energy? am I directing this energy into the physicality of this experience, which is just as much divine as the heavenly influence that is beyond physicality, equally divine. So, yeah, that's why I say it doesn't really matter to anyone. Like there's no should we should do this, or it's supposed to be this way, or you have to pray in this order, or you have to say these words, or you have to speak to this and name them this name, and all that. Anybody saying those kind of things, that's religious dogma, and that's exactly what Yeshua spoke against, and anyone who truly gets this would speak against. Religious dogma is that's where it gets tricky, because you're taking this foundational knowing and this connection that you are a part of all of that. You're a part of all of creation. You're a part of the divine, the heavenly influences. You're a part of the earthly physical manifestations. So there is no separation. So as soon as we start to, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with having names or ways, if I'm going into a tough situation and I want to call upon Archangel Michael as the warrior to come bring me strength, beautiful. There's great things that we can do with that. But if I'm treating Archangel Michael as if he's this separate being that, I have to pray to in this certain way, or I have to say these things in this order, or, there's nothing wrong to have rituals and all of that. But if that becomes the God, if that becomes the false idol, where I'm defining, okay, no, I have to say this in this order, and if I don't do this, then, I won't get what I want, or it won't be heard, or any of those kind of things. Or if I tell other people that, then these become false idols, where we're praying to something else, or attempting to, rather. And as soon as we start to bring in this attempt of some other way, it's taking us away from the simplicity, which is that it's all you. You're in all things. You're in there is no one else to pray to. So it's ultimately you. And again, not taken away from the reverence or the importance of prayer, and how wonderful it can be to remind ourselves of who we are and what we're stepping into, but also not to lose the simplicity of what are we really doing, which it's just connecting to you at your highest self, and you're the only one that there is. So yeah, I like I said, I enjoy using the distinguishment between Father God, Father Heaven, and Mother Earth, with no hierarchy, nothing more important, nothing better than or over the other. They're simply just manifestations of the same, expressing themselves in a seemingly opposite kind of way. But it's through that spectrum that this whole creation exists. And it's the friction between, which is the sacred sex of these two seemingly opposite forces coming together, creating that friction. And the friction between is where all creation manifests. And so you have us as a representation of this crossing point. X marks the spot between these two forces, and we're here to step into as higher expressions of that, realizing that there is no other and it's all you. But not letting that thought pattern take you into an egotistical way of like, oh, I'm more God than this person, so I can wield power over them, or I can destroy this thing, or whatever, like it's equal aspects of God, and you are part of that. So
well, and thank you, because you just confirmed everything that you said. I agree with you 100%. Unfortunately, when it comes to Christian dogma and everything else, I have lost some friends down the line, and I just realized that it doesn't matter. I have to respect them and accept them where they're at in their journey, and just love them. That's all I can do is love them. I mean, I had a very close friend, and we were just constantly, and it was like a turmoil between us. And I finally said, look, I love you, but I think I got to get off this train and I got to board another one. And she said, are you saying like you're leaving me? I'm like, no, it's just that we are in two different dimensions. And what is happening is she's more in the left side of the brain, and she doesn't know how to turn it off. Of course, in medicine and nursing, you have to be in the left brain when you're doing critical thinking, saving lives. But when I'm talking to you and I'm talking to people on Telegram or other, I'm on the right side. I mean, I get very touched. I get very emotional when I see children that are being mistreated, or, that I'm just in love with the right side of the heart, or the right side of my mind. And yes, thank you, because all I see is like living by myself. My mom and dad are gone. My sister was the last one. She's been gone 3 years. I have a brother, but he's still not awake, and that's okay. But I agree with what you're saying. And I don't believe in the religious dogma anymore. I don't believe in what's happening. And I hope I don't offend anyone. I don't believe in the stuff that's in the Bible. I don't believe that the God of the Old Testament is the God of the New Testament. But you know what? That's just what I believe. But if someone tells me, well, I believe that you're wrong. Okay, I'm wrong. And just move on. But then I learn as I go on not to get egotistical and to stay on the right side. I always say, cast your net to the right, stay on the right, and just love them. Because 3 or 4 years ago, maybe before I met you, I would have been on the left side. And I would have thought, you're whacked, okay? One of these things. And now I see everything the way you're talking about it. So thank you, Justin, because I felt like I just needed clarification. And I know I'm in the right path. I know that, Father God, I know we're all God's. But I never walk around thinking, hey, I'm God. I'm going to do, no. What I would love to be able to do one day is like when I see people in wheelchairs, is just to lay my hands on them and say, you're healed. And if they would get up and walk. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. And I don't know if I'll ever will be. But I thank you because I love talking to Mother Earth. When I'm outside working in my yard or with the birds and all that, I'm just constantly talking to her. I even hug the tree, and I'll sit there and put my feet barefooted down, and I'm hugging the tree and picking up the energy and everything else. And yet when I see the sun, I think of Jesus or Yeshua, and then of course, Father God. But then I'm like you. I reach out to Archangel Ariel. I've got a dog that's 16 years old, and in human terms, I think he's about 83 or something. So when I'm going to the grocery store, I'll say something like, okay, Archangel Ariel, I really need you to keep an eye on my dog here, while I'm gone and everything else. And then I find myself thanking him. I don't see them as higher beings. I see them as my equals, but I see that they have a better view of things. And the fact that I'm reaching out to them, I feel that, in my heart, I feel that they're there to help me. They're there to serve me so that I can reach my highest potential. And it's not like, hey, I'm Archangel Ariel, you don't talk to me. No, nothing like that. It's like me talking to you. There's nothing, whether you be a president of the United States or whatever. To me, you're a human, but that's from the nursing. And nursing, working in the ERs, I could not afford to be, pick and choose who I want. And if this guy is God gay or she's a lesbian, I don't have that. I didn't have that opportunity. My thing is to treat everyone and help them, get them as, cared as much as I could. And I loved them. I don't care what color, race, or creed. And that's the way my life has always been. And it does hurt me when I see friends of mine that don't see it that way. And so instead of hanging with them or talking to them, knowing that it could drop my frequency down or take me into a place where I may be, what do you call it? Not targeted, but I forgot what the word is, triggered. I just decide if I get triggered, I know it's about me. I never, like if you were to say something to me and trigger me, it's like, I'm going to go like, what's wrong with Justin? Why would he say, I don't? I go, okay. Why would Justin trigger me? Why do I feel, what did Justin say that triggered me? What am I supposed to learn about myself? I look at triggers as a gift from God, not always negative. It's just helping me become a better and a higher self. And I love that God uses that, or at least that's the way I interpret triggers. And so anyway, I don't want to take too much time because I know you got a lot of other questions. But anyway, thank you so much. It's been a while since I had been here. I've been really busy, and I thought I've got to make it a point to sit in one of your sessions here. So thank you so much, and God bless you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah, God bless you as well. And so glad you popped in and gave such great questions. Really appreciate that. And yeah, it's yeah, I agree with everything that you just said. The triggers are there oh, hey, is it your mic's still open on Telegram? We just got a little bit of feedback. If you just hit that center button on your screen to close the mic in Telegram, I can do it for you. There you go. Got it. Thank you. So yeah, the triggers being the perfect opportunities gifted to us by the divine to see where can I grow? Where can I grow? And like I said, if we're watching this movie and we're jumping at any scene, then that's where our work is. And that's okay. And that's where other people's work is, but it's not for me to decide whether the people's work to do is. I can just do me. So yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, great question. So I'll just pass it back and see if anybody else wants to jump in with a question or topic or anything, any which way. Feel free.
Hey, Justin. If no one else wants to speak, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about the story in the book of Daniel from his dream about the kingdoms with the statue, related to what we were talking about before, and like a silver, I think it's a gold kingdom, a silver kingdom, bronze kingdom, and of the statue that kind of goes down from his head, shoulders, sort of thighs. And then his feet and sort of shins, I think, are iron and clay. And I hear that referenced a lot in our current world, that a lot of these, sort of dualistic choices that we're being constantly thrown at, in this sort of, journey back to singularity. It's always this dualistic choice that's sort of being boiled down to. And yeah, I mean, in that story, I'm not sure if you know the story well. I can probably tell it a little more detailed than that, but it ends with the stone coming, and kind of like, I guess that could be seen as silicon, but in a way, like kind of like the printing press, or just knowledge or codified information, like the the different laws, or like the Constitution and things like this, is a codified version. So once we've sort of matured with technology, we can have a codified, set in stone laws that we can move forward with, where we're no longer like immature with a new thing. It's something that we've fully integrated into our collective being. So like say it was say with technology, for example, how we can all get online, and it's kind of like the Wild West of the internet. You can kind of say anything to anyone. What if that was suddenly we had full accountability, where whatever our identity, or maybe it was somehow pseudonymous, but to some kind of middle ground. Yeah, so yeah, I really like that story, and it kind of came to me as a way through this, a sort of biblical. I think it even says that there'll be silicon bodies, but they won't cleave, in the book of Daniel as well. So I just wondered if you looked into that.
Yeah, I know a little bit about it, and so just to remind everyone, or inform you if you're not familiar with the story. So, yeah, Daniel had these dreams, and in it, just very simply, he envisioned, as Reno mentioned, a gold in one, silver in another, bronze in another, iron in another, and then iron mixed with clay. And then the last was the stone. So if we just look at those elements and sort of what they represent, and the linear path that it's demonstrating, to me, this is showing the fall, and maybe it's mapping out a timeline of empires, or or civilizations that existed. So if the gold is like when we were at our peak, because the gold is the highest of high, representing that sort of first, the golden sunlight, the light manifests physically, then that would be perhaps us in our Atlantean state when we were in a heightened form, maybe in our silicon crystalline being structure where light could flow through us, where the golden light could permeate our being, and we probably shone literally. You know, we probably were, whether sparkling or glowing or whatever, you know, we probably actually literally shone like lights that you could see. And then from there it goes to silver, and then to bronze, and then to iron, and then to iron mixed with clay or clay. So you can see the path of descent through those ages and how it's carried us from that highest of high, and then we've been on the fall. So Daniel is speaking about the fall of man and sort of prophesizing this descent that is inevitable, just given the cyclical pattern of this experience. Every time we hit a high, there is going to be a fall. And the wisdom is, can we traverse that fall without falling too far? That's the challenge. Can we last through the winter without death taking us? You know, can we store up through the summer and fall? Can we store up a bountiful harvest to take us through? So yeah, that's what I see as what that story is referencing. And then the stone at the end, I mean, talk about a rock bottom, you know, it's us hitting the rock bottom turning point, the stone being like the foundational, maybe even like the lower firmament of like what is impermeable, what we cannot fall through. And that's where we start to shift around. So getting to that state where we're coming back to even moving away from the concepts of having man-made sort of things, coming back to the natural foundation, and then starting the journey back up again, all the way back through those elements back up to gold. So yeah, that's my take on that one. But I see Darth is on. Darth, do you have any thoughts on that parable and any more insight there? I know you've studied the Bible pretty extensively.
Sure. Let me just get to a quiet spot. Lock the door. Okay. So, so the book of Daniel has to do a lot with divine sovereignty. The entire book and many of the players in the book, they're all concerned with rulership and spiritual powers and the dominion over mankind and the redemption of mankind. Because in this time period, Israel was in captivity in Babylon, and they were being made to serve the demons of Babylon against their will. And their women were being raped, and their children were being sold into slavery, and they were dispersed all over the world, all over the Babylonian Empire, and this was all as a result of them turning away from divine grace, and for pursuing their own hedonistic desires, and so. But it wasn't just the Israelites that were concerned with their being saved and with redemption. The king of Babylon himself was also very concerned with rulership, because he had amassed a massive fortune, and he was now the world power. He was basically the equivalent of the president of the United States, right? The entire world trembled at the armies of Babylon at that time, and it was a newly established empire. And the king of Babylon, in the image of Egypt, and according to the pattern of Assyria, he himself claimed divine heritage and was worshipped as a god. So the book of Daniel has a lot to do with divine rulership. And so this king, he has a dream, and in the dream is a massive image, and the head is of gold, and the neck is of silver, and the bottom is of copper, and so on, until you get to the ankles and the feet and the toes, and the feet and the toes are made of iron and mixed clay, and so this the king of Babylon. I think his name is Nebuchadnezzar. I'd have to look it up. I'm reciting this all from memory, but the king of Babylon summons all the wise men of Babylon, and none of them are able to tell him the meaning of this dream. So finally, they summon Daniel, and Daniel says that the answer is not going to come from him, but it's going to come from the Lord in heaven, and he tells him that Babylon, according to the dream and according to the word of God, Babylon would not be the last world power, that they were in fact the third, and that there would be other world powers that would follow. So you start off with Egypt, Syria, then you have Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and then Rome. And Rome would evolve or devolve into the toes, and there was 10 toes to show that this would be a worldwide situation, and it would be the sum of all the world's governments, and all the world's governments would be mixed with iron-like elements and then soft and clay-like elements, and that they would not mix. And so that's kind of what we see. That's what happened to Rome. So you have the iron-like cabal, right? That's the heartless rulership of the parasite, but it's masquerading as a representative republic, and so it's the will of the people, and that's the soft clay-like element. Is that the people are desiring freedom. And so while the iron-like part of the rulership of the cabal is trying to dominate. And so these two ideas of domination and freedom, they don't mix, because either you're dominated or you're free. Either you're a slave or you're free. It's like you can't be both. And at the end times, which would be the times of the Roman Empire, there would be a stone not cut by human hands. So what does that mean? So human empires are made by human hands, right? Through human efforts, we wage war and we kill each other and we dominate each other. And then we set up human laws to set up these human institutions to dominate in a human way. But this stone would not be the product of human hands. It would be cut out by a divine force. And so that's signifying the rise of the Christ consciousness. And that this Christ consciousness, which was personified in Yeshua, or Jesus Christ at that time, would go and strike the image at the feet. And it's interesting. So from the divine perspective, all of these empires are all just one statue, right? So from our human perspective, we say, oh, well, the Egyptians were one thing, and the Assyrians, well, that's another empire, and Babylon, no, that's a third thing that's separate, and the Medo-Persian Empire, oh, that's separate from the Babylonians, and the Greece, well, that's a whole nother thing, and then Rome, oh, that's all separate. No, that's not how the divine sees it. From the perspective of the divine, they're all just one thing, and that is people making definitions and setting up rules and then forcing other humans to serve those definitions against their will. Okay, so that's what that statue is. And so from the perspective of Christ consciousness, he doesn't see a difference between Rome and the kingdom or the governments of Rome and the governments of Greece. To him, they're all the same thing. They're in opposition of the freedom of the Spirit of Christ. And so this stone would itself turn into a mountain. In ancient times, mountains symbolized governments. Okay, and they symbolize specifically spiritual governments, because you would worship on the top of the mountain, and you would set up your fortifications on the top of the mountain, because that's the easiest point to defend. So to say that this stone, not cut from human hands, would become a mountain, would say that this the Christ consciousness would itself form an institution and a government and a power, and that it would rule over mankind, and that it would bring to an end all these other kingdoms. So that's exactly what did happen. Is that the Christian empire, okay, the rule of Yeshua, of the Christ Spirit, did in fact bring an end to the Roman Empire. And then now we're seeing a minor resurgence for a short period of time. And the evil one has been let loose for a little while, according to other prophecies. But that's what that dream symbolized. That's the mainstream perspective on that prophecy. And almost all Christian faiths agree on that's what that means.
Awesome. Thanks, Darth. Yeah, that's great stuff. Really appreciate that. Yeah, that's all I got on it. Reno, did you want to add any more to that?
Well, just I would slightly disagree that it's about the fall of humans. Like I think Darth said it there better. I think that God never intended us to have human rule. You know, that was not his intention. That was something that humans wanted, you know, chose to do, to go through this process of you know, wanting, like, it's kind of like the Pilgrims coming to America. You know, they wanted to get away from that strenuous level of human rule, and be more led by, you know, God, by goodness, and by following his law. And so, yeah, I think it's it kind of codifies or symbolizes that process of us really, you know, growing through realizing the limitations of our own ruling to our own hand, and then coming to this, like, I guess it's like, the stone is like the triumph that reverses like the effect of our rebellion, and establishing like God's perfect rule, you know, where sin and death are defeated. And I think that the show Salvation, which is about 7 years old now, I think it was on network TV, did a really good job of symbolizing this. I think it's worth checking out. And the sort of climax to it at the end was an asteroid coming to Earth, and the purpose of that was, you know, for, I think it was like signposted 7 years ahead of time, that people all thought that there was impending doom, that the Earth would end, you know. And so yeah, there was a real conflict there between, I guess, almost a Noah story of like a reset, and the godless people freaking out, whereas the godly people, you know, holding true. And in the end, like, it's a kind of an amazing climax to the show. I don't want to ruin it too much, but obviously there's a protection on Earth, and the stone, not made by human hands, you know, was this asteroid coming right towards Earth, and at the last second stopping, you know, through some kind of a divine intervention. And I guess from that point on, you know, that's the ultimate climax of the show. And you know, there's no more telling of the story from there, but I guess the debate would be over from there about, you know, is God real, for example, and I guess faith would be, you know, less of an issue for some, you know, based on tangible evidence. But yeah, anyway, I just think it's really a beautiful allegory. And And I think the phrase "set in stone," it means that truth that we can really hold our hat on. So we're just less confused. In this kind of is it or isn't it kind of upside down truth kind of world that we've all been born into these days and having to detox from. So yeah, that's how I would sort of just pick up from it. So I mean that phrase "set in stone" is out there, and it does point to quite important steps, I think, in what's coming. Most famously said by the most famous pseudonym in the world. So yeah, I think that's really exciting.
If I can add one last addition, the Essenes, of which Yeshua was a member, the Essenes viewed the fulfillment of the prophecy of Daniel as specifically to their time period and their era. And that would have also been the viewpoint that Yeshua would have held to. So a lot of times, modern Christendom will try to modify that prophecy to apply toward our day, and they'll try to like stretch it out, and they'll try to add 1,000 years here and or take away a few years here and there, and they try to bend it to match some sort of modern interpretation and modern events. But all of the ancient Hebrews and all of the ancient Essenes, as far as any written record that we have access today, viewed it explicitly for their time period and not for ours.
Yeah, well said. And I would just add that it's ultimately these parables, these metaphors are meant to be related to ourselves. And so we go through the fall in order to come back to that solid rock, that solid foundation, that incorruptible stone, the Christ. And that's why even physiologically within ourselves, it is a fall and then it comes back up again. So there has to be that part of the process of releasing attachment. Desire has its, and that's what makes this experience so wonderful, is like we get to have desires and we get to have things that we get, projects and things and civilizations form and relationships form, and all of that is wonderful. It can be, but in order to truly reestablish and allow that divine growth to come back in a more seamless way, we have to be willing to let all of that go. And so that fall is the death, to go through the seasonal shifting of falling from the highest of gold that we were, and then come back to the root again. And then we work to rise back up. So to me, it's just describing that process, but this manifests in infinite number of ways. So I think, I think that was really well described.
Yeah, just quickly about the the timelines of these reoccurring, whether they're prophecies or they're kind of reoccurring patterns. Is Trump Cyrus? Is he Yehu? Some of these things they either fit or they don't. But in terms of storing wisdom and seeing patterns, look at the show Foundation, where everything is stored and suddenly they can see these recurring mathematical patterns that just occur amongst populations. And I guess storing wisdom allows us to, the brain is more like a processor than a hard drive at its best. And as people are getting more used to using AI, for example, they're using their brain more as processors than hard drives, interestingly. And I don't know, another concept is the little season. I don't know if you guys have bumped into that, but that's been around. And they talk about if they were to place us on kind of Revelation timeline, they would say we're in this Satan's little season kind of thing, and that as Darth said, a lot of the, the more literal things of Christ as the man, and all these, the kind of historical aspects have occurred, and that, maybe there's been some messing around with some dates. I mean, even in my little town here in Germany, there are interesting variations on, like, the 19, say it's a date 17 blah blah blah. The one at the very start looks like a J or an I. Obviously they didn't say I back then, but the I was for Yeshua. And so, and a lot of the old buildings, around the world, you can kind of see the one is often, it looks like it's been kind of written over or changed, and it often says founded. It kind of doesn't make sense how old some of these buildings are. That they were just founded. People just founded them, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, so the timeline could be different with that, but yeah, I mean, when we think of, like, the law or Christ as a man having already happened, and the second coming is us, I mean, that makes the most sense. That the law is written in our hearts, and it's really our own self-realization, and that Christed path back to singularity consciousness, that's going to unify us all, and take us away from our own stupid, governments and being ruled over, and that kind of thing, and bring us to like look at the power of the printing press that did so much good at decentralizing power. Think about the future of what technology could do through benevolent AIs, or just very clear structures of openness, transparency, and accountability, digitally, that could bring a much higher level of sort of just truth and openness. And just look at what Tucker and Candace are up to with sort of kicking out Israel from behind the scenes in the American government or military, whatever. Like, we're clearly progressing to a more truthful time, and just, yeah. So I don't know if I have a question in that. I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, it's great stuff. I mean, the pattern is helpful to know, and then we can see kind of where we are within it, and these same archetypical elements, and that's why they're called archetypes, because they arc over each timeline, each way, each opportunity this cycle shows up. But knowing the patterns helps us to, uncover where we are, and that can be helpful to know. So yeah, great stuff. Thanks for bringing all that up, and I will just pass it back.
I had a quick question for Darth about Gog and Magog, or the little season theory. If he has if he's seen that around, or what he thinks of that.
I'm familiar with that perspective, and that is actually the perspective that I was initiated into as a young man. That the dates had indeed been altered, and we were much closer to the time of Yeshua than we were taught in the mainstream. And that was done because if you say Christ lived 2,000 years ago, that's ancient history, right? But if you find out that Christ was just, half that time, or perhaps even sooner, well, all of a sudden that brings it into much closer. It's much more personal. It's much more relevant. And if you find out that, and what they're taught is that the reign of Christ is in the foggy future, right? Oh, Armageddon's coming, right? Oh, the Messianic kingdom is coming, right? But no one really knows when, right? And so that just kind of makes you give up in the battle between good and evil. And it just kind of makes you surrender the current world that we live in to evil, because, we're all just waiting for Christ. But if you find, when you look at things from the perspective of, oh, we're in the little season and we're surrounded and we had better stand our ground, right? That changes our behavior. So the perspective of when we were and where we are, the mainstream narrative, it really disarms Christians, and it prevents Christians from stepping into their power and acting in the power of Christ consciousness and the ability of the Christic spirit to render judgment on evil around us. So that's what I was taught. And there's certainly a lot of evidence to support that theory and that perspective. However, as I've spiritually matured, I now notice why a lot of my teachers always said it is as though. So the only thing that is absolutely true is absolute love is absolutely good. And everything else is just true most of the time from a certain perspective. So that teaching that we're in the little season, it may be very useful, right? And it may be very empowering. However, we should caution ourselves into not falling into the mistake that the Egyptian empire made, and the Assyrian, and the Medes, and the Persians, and the Romans, and the Babylonians. And what is the mistake that they made? They made a definition, and they made a storyline, and they made a perspective, and then they said, our perspective and our history and our story is absolutely good and true, and everything that doesn't adhere to it is now bad, right? So we don't want to take even our Christian history and even our Christian perspective and even our Christian philosophies, we don't want to say that they are absolutely true and absolutely good, because the instant we do that, they become false, right? So the word Christ is not actually Christ, right? Like the word dog is not a dog, right? So like, let's say that me and Justin, we're here fighting for the homestead, right? And we're surrounded, and Justin's like, hey, give me some more ammo, right? I'm not going to write the word ammo and then hand him that, because the word ammo isn't actually ammo, right? So the word Christ is not Christ. And the words, truth and goodness, the words are not actually those things. They're just pointers. And so we don't want to make the same mistake as others have made and said that, oh, my perspective is absolutely true, because it's not. There are other timelines, and there are other dimensions, and there are other histories, and there are other people that, maybe we can see these people, but they're standing in a slightly different timeline than we are. And so we should, exercise understanding when dealing with others, especially others that are suffering. And the only thing we can really do is say that, I myself, I'm going to choose to do the best I can. And I'm going to choose to be as wise as I can, and as loving as I can, and as Christian as I can, and as ascended and as divine as I possibly can be, and then render no judgment upon others, though we can certainly render judgment on evil ideas.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, that was well said. Thank you. Yeah, anyone else want to jump in? Question or thoughts on anything shared, or
one last side point.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So Reno, David, I think it was him talking. He said that about an asteroid, and then settling the issue about God being real. So here's a one little simple argument we all can use to prove that God exists. So by whatever definition you're going to use to describe God, in order for God to not exist, he would have to not exist anywhere. But in order for God to not exist anywhere, there would have to be some godlike principle to enforce that. And that principle would then, by definition, become God. So there's no logical way to say that there's no God. And there's no logical system of beliefs that don't include some divine godlike principle. And there's certain groups of people that may teach atheism, but no one in the know and none of the individuals behind the system or the belief of atheisms are themselves atheists. It doesn't exist anywhere in any teaching, in any book. It's just atheism it's like communism, where you have the foot soldiers that believe in communism, but no one who actually holds the power in communism actually believes in it. And so atheism is exactly the same way. No one that controls the belief system of atheism actually believes that, because it's an unsustainable thought. So I'll repeat the idea one more time. In order for there to be no God, there would have to be no God everywhere. But the only way there can be no God anywhere is for God to enforce that rule, thus becoming God. So atheism, on its face, is just retarded. And no serious thinker would ever support such an unsupportable idea. And I'm sorry if I've hurt anyone's feelings, but that's just what it is.
I love that. Just a quick proof. I mean, among many, there are many ways to logically prove God, but yeah, not really worth it if someone is committed. So yeah, that was great stuff. I see Loretta. So we'll go with Loretta and then Tracy. Go ahead, Loretta.
Yes, I just kind of jumped on, but yeah, that's so true. And I'm the same way. I'm just getting to the point where when you start putting a title on something or naming something, then it can become that little g God. And we don't have to do that. Try to stay out of your mind energy and just try to just move in the moment in your heart energy and let yourself rise to those ascension process to where you actually are feeling something. So you, like most of us, when we feel passion or compassion, we move on that instantly. If we see like a little kid hurt, you just immediately run to pick them up or help them. And that's how you have to look at everything in life. You have to look at, the perspective of just being in the moment and knowing that your energy, you're the God perspective. You don't have to tell anybody that. I mean, I have to have these arguments with my son about Jesus is in us and I'm in him and he's in you. We're all in each other. And we're all just a fractal of that energy. And we're all just being, the human, I guess, existed just because, Source wanted to find out, what it would be like to have all these feelings and things we go through as a human. It's just an experience. Just realize that life is an experience and don't pass anything up. Nothing is really wrong. Nothing is really right. Everything just is because we are who we are in that energy. So just, that's how I kind of look at it. I've come like a long way and it's just my own perspective, or if you want to say it. But I haven't had a lot of reading or something. I'm just doing a lot of observing and listening to different people and recognizing what is really true. So I just say, we're all one happy family, and that's, how we have to look at it, and just, it's going to be good. the world is going to really be good once we can actually operate in these new understanding and truths that we actually know. Does that make any sense to anybody?
Oh, it makes total sense. Very beautifully said. Very much agreed. And yeah, that's what it reminds me of the presentation that Darth gave, Q-based metaphysics, how we got flipped upside down, which again, very much recommend watching that. It was done a few years ago at this point. We do plan on redoing that one again, just because it was so impactful, to just bring it back to the forefront. But within that, Darth beautifully goes over how as soon as we start to define goodness, we're gonna bring about the potential for evil to manifest. So as soon as you try and put God in a box, and even with names and terminology, if the importance is given to the terminology or the name, the definition, then I'm creating a false idol, and I'm creating the potential for distortion, inversion, manipulation, all these things, giving evil direct access to interact with this space. So if we remain with our relationship with God goodness in this untethered, undefined way, just a knowing, an absolute knowing that's beyond description, beyond words, beyond all of that, then we don't leave the possibility for evil to enter. We don't leave that potential for it to exist. So it does get tricky to talk about these kind of things, because of course we're using words and we are somewhat defining things with that. And in order to have mutual understanding around what we're talking about, that is somewhat required. And that's where the challenge presents itself to all masters who teach this material. And people write down their words, and then those words become defined and dogmatized and all these different things. And all of that takes us away from the central teaching, the way. So how do we share this message? How do we, and how do you teach it without risk of that? You can't ultimately, but to constantly be having these disclaimers and reminders of avoiding religions, avoiding definitions, avoiding dogmas, avoiding all of that, because that's the path for evil to manifest. And so it just has to be continuously, we're continuously aware of that. And that's why Jesus, Yeshua, was always admonishing the disciples anytime they would look to religious or start to implement religious ideas or ask him religiously centered questions. He'd be like, stop that. That's not what I'm saying. You don't get it. And that's kind of the stance that we have to be in order to avoid that potentiality. So yeah, great point, Loretta. Thank you for bringing that up. And yeah, I saw, go ahead, Lila. You want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, kind of circling back to what Darth was saying around judgment, not judging, which I really feel alignment with, but has also led me, has led me to a space of a slippery slope of allowing and participating by not having a strong boundary, because I, would say in this way to myself, like, do not judge, let people do what they will. And of course it's a sovereign, free, earthly plane. And I do resonate with that. And then also I can see places where that teaching has kind of rumbled around in my brain, and then allowed spaces where I was not discerning or even encouraging others to be, because I had this perception of not judging, quote unquote. I was wondering if anybody, you or Darth or anybody, would like to say or share any bit about that, or maybe it's just a thread of a thought of mine that seems to really resonate with this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. And maybe you didn't hear Darth, but he did mention, not judging people, but we do judge evil, or we do judge action, essentially. So there's only two flavors that actions can flow into the space. One is aligned with that Christic goodness, and then there's the other. So that's where we point our discernment and our judgment is on the action. You shall know them by their fruits. Well, we have to distinguish what are the fruits. And so I'm not pointing my judgment at the tree, because the tree has its ability to shift, and I don't know what the tree has gone through to lead to that point, but I can judge the actions. And if the actions are, causing harm, then it is my duty to step in and prevent that, whether that harm is being caused to myself or to others around. So that's what helps me to distinguish in that sort of non-judgment kind of way of, I'm not judging the individual. I'm not judging where they're coming from or how they got to that space, but I am absolutely judging the action. And because if we relinquish that what we're supposed to be doing, then that's what gives evil the platform to come in unimpeded. So yeah, that's my quick take, but
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Thank you. And yes, I did I must have missed that particular part because I was making videos of the sunset. So there were a few times I would have to leave so I could record a video. But thank you. Yeah. And I've come to know that. But I wanted to hear it a little more, I guess. Maybe it needed to be said twice in this conversation for at least myself, if not others. But yeah, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I saw Darth, you wanted to say something too. Did you want to add to that?
I did. I was tickled and amused that she saw the flaw in the whole obsession of non-judgment, because it's so, life is so paradoxical. All right, so we try to practice non-judgment, and the whole non-judgment thing really kind of goes along with the philosophy of non-attachment, which is also something that Yeshua taught about storing our treasures in heaven versus storing our treasures on earth. Because when we get attached to things here on earth, rust and moth and thieves and that sort of thing. And Yeshua, did preach a lot about non-judgment, and yet he also foretold a time of great adversary. He said, "Sell your outer cloak and purchase a sword." And he talked about the Son of Man coming in the clouds to render judgment, and he taught his apostles that those that they cursed would be cursed, and those that they blessed would be blessed. And in our lives, we have to make judgments not just on ideas, but on those around us that attach themselves to these ideas. And there's a serious price for making the wrong judgment. We may attach ourselves to someone, and we may, grow to love this person and care deeply about them. But if this person is unwell or evil or not following the Christic path, and we remain attached to them, what is the destiny of that idea? So there are times when, yes, we have to render judgment, and especially when it comes to those that harm the children. So the scriptures say that there is a time to love, and a time to hate, and a time for life, and a time for death, and a time for peace, and a time for war. And so that's the thing about walking the spiritual path is that even when it comes to love, we do not worship. We don't worship peace. We don't worship war. We don't worship tranquility. We don't worship adversity. We worship that which is absolutely divinely good. And absolute divine goodness has two sons, the blessing and the malediction, the angel of life and the angel of death. And from the perspective of the absolute divine, both these sons, the angel and the demon, they're both his sons. And he gives a time to one and he gives a time to other. And it's our job as those that are walking in the highest divine path to know what time which son is ruling and whose jurisdiction we're in, and when we should practice non-attachment and when we should attach ourselves, and when we should practice non-judgment and when we should practice judgment. Because there's a time and a season for everything, and it's the absolute Father above that makes these decisions. And it's not for us to decide what season it is. All we can do is decide whether or not we're going to go along with what the Father has decided. And that's what Yeshua always taught. He says that he spoke not a single word out of his own initiative, but he only spoke what the Father above allowed him to speak. And he says that he did nothing of his own accord, but he only acted according to what the Father above said. So that's the same that we should do, because we're the same as Yeshua, and that's what he taught, that we're all just the one.
Yeah, beautifully said. Thank you for that. And
Yeah, because that was confusing for me, especially as I came into, studying the Bible, the whole like turn the other cheek. And then there was those times when Yeshua had such a strong energy of turning over the tables. And I do find myself at times confused between the two, when to do what. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I ask about that? Because I think it's really, I think it applies around free will. That's the time to accept people's choice, and that's the kind of turn the other cheek thing. But hating evil, is doing everything you can to, I think Charlie Kirk says it the best, where it's like, is there absolute morality? Lots of young people would come up to him and kind of say, like, everything's all good, and it's very open-ended sort of morality, and he would ask them, is there anything that's absolute morality? And would you say, do you believe that absolutely? And a lot of, often it would center around murder. Is murder morally always, the definition of murder, bad? And that was then led to what is good then? Obviously anything that is life-giving. So it's a life and death choice, and I guess that's at the heart of the non-violent communication too. Not so much as a non-judgment. It's about judgment based on the life, on the need. How do we bring everyone's needs forwards to cultivate life? Make life and bring it to its full maturity or growth. Like Jesus, the way, the truth, and the life. So I think the only time to sort of hold our hands up and say we can't intervene is when it's someone's free will, because then that takes us, violating someone else's free will to demand, not request, to demand that they choose life. Then we're playing the game of the negative polarity. So it's really staying in the positive polarity of just, saying what's true for you, of what, look at any issue that the immigration thing in America, for example. There's a need for a shared reality. That's what brings life, like a coherent national story that everyone can kind of, because immigration brings a kind of fractured cultures that aren't, diversity isn't good in that sense, because it loses coherence for a national identity. And same with abortion. The need is for respecting all life at whatever form, stage that it is, from the zygote, from the embryo all the way through, to be consistent with a moral absolutism of being pro-life, of life being the primary thing. So yeah, I think if in order to be non-judgmental or non-violent to the outside world, that's the inside journey first, to fully embrace life within ourselves, and to let go of death-giving ideas, and to love the sinner in other people, but hate the sin. And that's kind of the offense of Israel, for example, because they're a country taking the idea of Israel, which is another form of euphemism for life, and making it into a physical thing. So hating, that's kind of where the so that, I guess, in every political discussion or any contentious idea, focusing on what is the life, the way out of the division is to just be pro-life in every, internally and externally, and that's the way of Christ, I think, that we're called to find, to bring a shared reality. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, I would, just to jump in real quick, I would respectfully disagree with the throwing the hands up when it involves free will, because then that's what's opening the doorway for those acts that you say we should hate, such as, raping a child. If somebody's free will leads them to making that decision, that's nothing that I will ever tolerate in my presence. And so then it's my free will, to stand in between. And but I believe in a larger sense, there's karmic consequences for when we turn a blind eye to behavior like that. If we just allow the individualized free will to overrule somebody else's free will, to cause harm where it's unwanted or not asked for, and we just allow that to happen, then we're karmically absorbing that weight of that negligence of allowing these kind of things to happen. And so then that's just going to manifest into a more collective repercussion, consequence for allowing this sort of harm to go unstopped. And so that's where, in those moments, we can step forward as the Christic, but also karmic consequential carrier. I agree with you completely about having that internal discernment to know where your compass is pointing, to be able to make a judgment call like that, to be able to distinguish where that's actually occurring. First and foremost must be done to have that. Otherwise, we're just, sort of like an emotional, not centered decision maker within those kind of things. But having that wherewithal, then it's absolutely imperative that we have a great intolerance for evil or any harm being caused against another, so that we avoid a larger karmic consequence collectively. To enact, say, use that example of somebody raping a child, like, I need to stop that right away, and there needs to be a consequence for that individual, not from a space of hatred within me towards that individual, because I know that there is no other, so that the one raping that child is ultimately me, and the child is me. But at the same time, to loathe that action and do whatever's necessary to prevent that action from being done in my space, in my presence, being aligned with that energy, and anything otherwise is just encouraging the separation. If I'm allowing that harm to be occurred, allowing that trauma to be instilled into another, then division and death is the trajectory. So how do I right that opportunity and shift that? So yeah, that's exactly why, this conversation is challenging, and going back to the issue with defining things and having teachings of Yeshua or anybody being written in word, and then people can pick apart and say, oh, well, does this apply to everything, or does this apply to that thing? It's like, well, it all applies to something at some point, but you have to be the distinguish. You have to be the one to recognize when it is applicable. That's why it's not a polarized way either direction. It's a middle. It's right in the middle, with you being the deciding factor based on your God-given Christic alignment of what is the correct way to go in this moment. So it's it's impossible to define end all be all approach to everything all at once, because it is very fluid. So yeah, just wanted to say that quickly, but I'll pass it over to you, Darth. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with everything that you just said, and I knew you'd catch it. So here's a scripture. This is taken from Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 16. It says, "For they cannot rest until they do evil. They are robbed of sleep until they make someone stumble." And here's the Berean Standard Bible. "They cannot sleep unless they do evil. They are deprived of slumber until they make someone fall." And there are other versions that says they cannot sleep or rest until they do wrong or harm some innocent victim. There's another version that says that they cannot sleep unless they commit murder. Or they cannot rest unless they take the life of someone else, unless they have overthrown someone. So that's the thing about free will. And that's the thing about saying that, oh, okay, so let's say we're going to make the definition that, here we're going to define goodness as doing no harm to someone else. The problem with that is that there is a large percentage of the population that appears to be human, that they're evil, and they don't have that Christian soul. And here's where the discussion that Justin and I are going to have Sunday, that we're inviting everyone to watch, that is it would be very easy to make. I mean, you could even use lesser than God definitions, and when doing what's right is easy when everyone is doing what's right. When everyone is good, doing what's right is easy. But the problem is that there's two families here on earth. There's the family of that Christic spirit. There's the family of life. But then there's another family here, the family of the antichristic spirit, the family of death. And the thing is that when they are not causing suffering, then they themselves are suffering. If they're not consuming your life, then they are in pain. You see, heaven and hell are the same place. And we have to choose who's going to be in hell, us or them. Because one of these families have got to be in heaven, and one of them has got to be in hell. And that's just the way that it is. And so if we go through life saying that I'm never going to hurt someone, and I'm never going to violate anyone's free will, well, that works great until you meet someone evil. And it is their will, and it is their choice to hurt you. So as men, and it falls upon us men, and it falls upon us to have the ability, women have the ability to grant life. Life comes through a woman, right? But, also men, we make life possible. But we also have the ability to bring about death. And That's the highest issue that a man can face and live by. Is he going to believe everything that his ancestors said about the evil ones, or is he going to believe what the evil ones say about his ancestors? You know, is he willing to do what is unpleasant in order to preserve innocence and to preserve the children? But the evil ones have children too, right? So the same way there's the symbiotic human, there's the parasitic human, but both the symbiotic and the parasitic human both have children. What a paradoxical reality that we live in. And we all live here on this one earth because there's nowhere else to live. So that's how come I say that we can't worship definitions. Because the second we make a definition, we become vulnerable to those that would exploit that definition. And the second we make a definition, we open the door for evil to step through and take control of it and alter it and bring the definition that we made to bear upon us. So, I mean, there's a story that I read. I was told this story when I was a very young boy, and it's about a good man. He was a good man, and he always said, "Do no harm." That's what this good man said. And he said, this good man always said, never infringe on anyone else's free will. So one day, this good man is at a campfire, warming himself in the night. And he hears a rustling of leaves, and into the campfire light steps a vampire. And the vampire says to him, "I'm thirsty. Give me your blood." And the man's like, "No, you cannot have my blood." The vampire says, "But I am suffering so much. I need your blood." And the man says, No, I need my blood." And the vampire said, "Well, give me the blood of your child, because I am in so much pain unless I take someone's blood." The man says, "No." And the vampire says, "No, but I'm choosing. I'm going to do it." And so the man had to wrestle with his philosophy to do no harm or not to infringe. And finally, he had to step up and put the vampire to death to protect his children and his wife and his younger sons and himself. And as he was striking out, the vampire was, screaming a horrible sound and saying that you're hurting me, and isn't my life as precious as yours? So, is our lives as precious as those that would take our lives? Whose life is more valuable? It takes a real man to step up and answer that question.
Yeah, very much agree. Thank you for that. That was beautifully said. And yeah, just since we're running limited on time today, and Tracy, you've been so patient, I appreciate that. So we'll pass it over to you, Tracy, and then that will be the last for today.
Well, I really appreciate being able to listen to everyone, because every like, I wanted to comment on certain things. I was like, yeah, I'm really, really resonating with that. And then the next conversation would happen. I'm like, yeah, that too. And then again, oh, that too. So everybody's just, it was beautifully stated by each person's perspective here. So I really appreciate everyone that has spoken so far today. So I'm going to start with Izzy. And when she was saying how she's had this experience where something came back to her that she thought she sort of dealt with, and it really took her by surprise, because it literally became completely, excuse me, hang on one second. Pardon me. So it became like completely like a physical overwhelming from her accident that was like so long ago that she thought, why would that come out now? And so I've had a recent experience myself, but I have had these things happen in my life where some very traumatic things that I went through. I thought that I had dealt with it, or essentially dealt with it, but I had things put back. I kept it sort of buried in my subconscious. Like I consciously did that because it was so painful, but I was dealing with it. I wasn't burying it to forget about it and hide it and run away from. It was to control that I wouldn't have it wouldn't like overboil and squeeze out in a situation where I'd be out in public, because that's what started happening. I would have an experience where nothing at all related to my stuff. We would be in some sort of whatever social environment, and there would be like some kind of a trigger word, but I don't know what that trigger word is. But all of a sudden, I would react about my stuff, and there'd be nothing discussed about anything that should trigger me, and I would have it would feel like out of body experience. It'd be like out of control. I had no control over it. My subconscious would just like open up the vaults, if you will, and overwhelm me with it. So much so that I would either get really emotional, start crying and sort of rambling and speaking on something and not even making sense, or the opposite. I would go completely catatonic and wouldn't be able to speak at all, but I could feel everything and knew everything, was aware of everything. Anyway, this has happened in life. So it's something that, for example, this whole thing you're talking about judging, having to walk away from others that are not necessarily because I'm on the Christic path, they're not. But I have had to do that in many relationships throughout my walk here. And but speaking specifically to my specific childhood trauma, was being able to let go of my family. Now that was a period of like a long period of time where I would go back and forth on it, like literally decades. So I finally said my goodbyes when I finally actually became a born-again Christian, and I had no biblical experience whatsoever or a so-called connection of God to the Bible. And as I was going through a period of my life around 2014, I was, speaking out to God, but I knew it as God, but not really. I just knew it as my higher power. I, was in touch with it for, since my 20s. I was aware there was something, but because I have no biblical or religious background, I had no idea to connect it to the Bible. Anyways, so when I started to wanted to come out of the life that I was going through a lot of difficult stuff, and I left my public life, and I became very sick. But sort of just before that, I was asking God to making a deal with God, kind of like, I just want to live and be doing good things. I want to become, recommit myself to my marriage. I want to go to school in my 50s. I want to just go learn something. So please, God, help me have the strength to step away from my current life into a new life. And I didn't even know that I was really what I was doing when I was asking that, but it happened. And then I got really sick. I got so sick I couldn't be out in public anymore. And I was starting to be cyber stalked and cyber stalked, but also like stalked by a group of people in public. So all these things happened at once where I had to be isolated. And then then Q came up. Then the president's the first 2015, 2016, learning about the president Donald Trump running for his first presidential election and getting into Q and all that. So it literally, he put me in that place. Anyways, I then, in that process also became baptized and had God in my heart when I forgave my family completely 100%, said my goodbyes, I didn't have at that point any more anger towards them specifically. But then once I said my goodbyes, and that was 2017, I have not had any of the thoughts I used to have. I have not wanted to turn back. the yo-yoing of the love-hate relationship I had with my family, which was always long distance. It's another thing. I lived in a different country the whole time, away from my family, throughout most of my life. So we always lived far away, long distance. So any communication was always done over the phone. Anyway, some recent stuff has been happening, and similar to Izzy, there's been the anger that I never transmuted is something that I'm dealing with now in different ways. So having to look, like you said, like you're in an experience and you're like, okay, I'm being triggered here by so-and-so doing such. What is it that's in me? So that's what I've been doing as well. And doing is, meditating on it. And so much so that I don't really even play music anymore because I'm in a new environment here and I have this like just mind-blowingly peaceful location that I'm at, and being able to be surrounded by nature, literally immersed in it. There's giant trees surrounding me. I can reach off my balcony and touch them, talk to them, and everything around me, all the flora and fauna that's around here. It's just incredible. It's a very untouched little spot that's not overdeveloped or anything. They've kept the control of the development here. So, and I've been able to just be immersed in the middle of that. Like I feel like I live in a treehouse practically, but I'm only on the second floor. So I'm really close to the ground as well, just really close to everything. I'm really close to the ocean here. Like I can literally see it from my balcony. So all of those things that you say about what you love to do and have the mantras in the morning and all that, yeah, it is incredible. It sounds so simplistic, and I do it. It's different for me every day. I don't do like exact same things like you say, but there are things that you want to appreciate and have gratitude for. So that has been the way that I'm healing myself, and the way that I meditate, and the way that I'm trying to, trying to clear away. But I didn't realize sort of how deep the anger is, because I really didn't actually. I think I transferred the anger of my situation onto everything that I started to learn about Q. And then the riots in Hong Kong came, and then COVID came. My marriage, we became separated and being divorced. So, and then maneuvering around. Once I'd left the isolated life that I wasn't even I had not been in public for like 6 years. So it's been like 3 or 4 years, going on 4 years now. Was it 3 years that I've been fully out in public? And being this whole new, like, sort of transforming everything about my life. Every single facet of my life has changed. And it's been very uncomfortable, but also so beautiful and so freeing to learn about myself. So, but I wanted to talk now sort of about the immigration thing that's going on. Is that it's just so weird too that my ex is American. I'm Canadian, and I was not allowed to get a green card because back when I was when I was 18 years old, I was arrested for shoplifting, and I went to jail for it. I got 30 days, 30 days in a minimum security prison or I guess jail, maybe not prison. I don't know what you call it, but the difference there, up in Canada. Anyway, that record stayed with me, and so in my 30s, when I tried to apply for the green card with Eddie, and I was not allowed. We paid $5,000 to a lawyer, and then he just gave us a few statements of, no, you'll never be able to do it. USA never expunges your record. It's forever. I had gotten a pardon in Canada, so I had a clean record, but the USA wouldn't allow me. So now, fast forward to today, and look what they're allowing in, for God's sake. Oh my God. So I never ever did get my green card. I always had to have they treated me like I was this horrific felon, ex-convict, and I had to get in for special interviews and get specific type visas processed into my passport every time I wanted to enter the States. And went on, I was only given short periods of time to enter the country. Oh, here you can go for like a month, that's it, and you gotta leave. Or here you go, you got 6 months and you can enter twice. And then it grew up to like, oh, here's it. I got a 10-year stamp, and I could enter and leave as many times as I wanted, as long as I adhere to all the rules, and I did. So anyway, so I never did get my green card in that sense, but I feel like it kind of clicked to me into that when you played Green Day as well today, which I absolutely love. I used to listen to that whole album always. It's like the whole album from start to finish in my truck when I was driving around Japan. I had a really, really nice, what was it? I was a Freelander. It was a Land Rover Freelander. It was one of their first new kind of these little sporty little models. And I used to drive that around Tokyo and all over the place and just jam that in my little truck. Anyway, I saw them here in Hong Kong, actually. They played here in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is not a big concert hub. It has small venues. It does have a scene, if you will, but it's nothing like, say, New York or LA, like nothing. So the venues are kind of hit and miss depending on the artist. But I've seen Alicia Keys and I saw Green Day. Green Day was the last band I saw here. Anyways, I really love them. And I used to play those two songs specifically when I go to the pub at Smugglers. Funny that I went to a pub called Smugglers and I started to learn about child trafficking and child smuggling and human smuggling. Anyway, and I used to play those two songs, and I love to play them because they only cost $1.25, and it was two songs because they play on the album like that. They flow into each other, right? So then they'd be my favorite. Everybody knew that those were Tracy's songs and stuff, and I would jump up on there was like a benches and stuff. We'd always jump on the benches and dance and stuff. So that's what I would do, and sing it and dance and stuff like that. So I had not listened to it for a very, very long time. But yeah, so no green card, love Green Day, but I think I have the best green card of all, which is that I have God, and I have God's passport now, so I don't need those stinking USA green card. But how, just how bizarre it is, what the state of it is now, and it's just so crazy, all of it, and how all these things, doesn't intertwine. It's maybe as I'm saying this, I'm just like, sticking together a whole bunch of random experiences in my life. But to me, there's that cord that runs through everything. It runs through everything, and it's undeniable. So, yeah, that's it for now. I just wanted to say that. I know we have to shut down quickly. So, but yeah, thanks for letting me speak. It was lovely to hear you all speak as well. All right. Love you guys.
Yeah, I love you too. Lila, did you want to jump in real quick? We're not hearing you if you're saying anything. Did want to start wrapping up, but we'll give Lila a chance if she's got something to say.
Hey, just can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just wanted to respond quickly. I love that so much, God's green card. As someone who hasn't been able to get a passport for a couple of years, I can really relate, and I feel like God has put me exactly where I'm meant to be, and it has not been, what I would have thought before. I like that would have just been like a nightmare, a suffering nightmare, to think that I couldn't travel the earth freely, and to be sort of corralled into America during this time has been so lovely. And I know it's God worked that for whatever reason. Thank you.
Yeah, it is perfect. The green card, the heart card, the true Christ card. That's the only one that you really need, because that's who you are. So thanks for that, Tracy. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, so we'll go ahead and start wrapping up today. And just before we close out, I want to go over the lyrics of the two songs I'm going to play us out with. So this first one, Wake Me Up When September Ends, is also from that same album. So I'm sure Tracy knows it well. And this one has just been playing in my head ever since I did that post earlier this week, which I was a little bit cryptic with, because who knows what's going to happen, but I did get word that something big was going to happen this week, and we still have some of this week to go. So we'll see. I'm not going to go into more detail other than that, just to stay frosty. But part of that, and what this song always reminds me is that reminder that, like, wake me up when September ends, because we're moving to be woken up. And so, yeah, that's why I chose this song as well to play us out. And just to go over the lyrics real quickly, it's of course very deep. And it's about the sort of passing of the summer and the transition. It's processing the death and then the eventual rebirth to move through that. And so, yeah, it's like a dark night of the soul. It's a sad song. But it's through that process that we're forged to come out on the other side and to spring into new life. So summer has come and passed. The innocent can never last. Wake me up when September ends. Wake me up when this time of death and has come and passed. Like my father's come to pass. So our Father above, 7 years has gone so fast. So 7 being the full transformational process, whether we're falling through the 7 or rising back up the 7, it's part of that. So this would be probably the fall from this. Here comes the rain again, falling from the stars. So we are the stars, falling, drenched in my pain again, becoming who we are. So that's the alchemical transformational note in here, becoming who we are, drenched in my pain. So we find meaning in the pain. The pain can bring us great lessons, great learning. As my memory rests, but never forgets what I lost. So my memory rests as in maybe the thinking mind, analyzing everything, maybe that rests, but never forgets what I lost. We forget, but never forget, kind of thing. We're remembering this past and remembering the cycles as we go through, so that we can hopefully learn not to fall in the same way again. The fall is part of the process, but it doesn't have to be this severe. Summer has come and passed. The innocent neck can never last. Wake me up when September ends. Ring out the bells again, like we did when spring began. So it's like coming back out of death and winter and coming back into spring. Ring out the bells being that connective point to the divine. But we're still in the fall, so it's repeating that again. But never forgets what I lost. Yeah, so then it repeats. Yeah, just repeats again. Wake me up when September ends. So not necessarily always enjoyable to go through the death process, but it is essential. It is essential. So that's what's described in this one. And then the last song that I'll play us out with is Good Riddance, or Time of Your Life. So another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question, but a lesson learned in time. So it's just describing the full, the full process, the full experience that we're going through. It's not a question, but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, undefinable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. That's what we might sing to ourselves as we immerse ourselves into this experience where we forget who we are, just to remember again. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind, hanging on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoos of memories and dead skin on trial for what it's worth. It was worth all the while. What a beautiful comparison, contrasting the what we might perceive as good and bad, and all in between, all these experiences that we've had. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. Repeated 3 times. So yeah, 2 more great songs by Green Day that I'm going to play us out with. So thank you for listening to today's show. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you to everyone who chimed in, brought such great questions, great talking points. Thank you to everybody who listened, who's listening live now and will listen later. Just appreciate all the energy and frequencies adding to this beautiful space. So let's keep on going. So we'll keep on doing these next week. Likely we'll have a watch party tomorrow night. Not sure what. And then stay tuned for the show announcement on Sunday. Sunday, what is that? Sunday, October 5th is when we're going to have the show on consciousness. So I'll narrow down a time and send an announcement out soon. But that should be another great one. Should be a lot of fun to discuss. So have a wonderful, wonderful day, evening, wherever you are. Thanks for tuning in, and enjoy these songs, and we'll see you next time.